Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first update on my experience with the Asus ROG Ally. Now, this is a portable gaming console, but truthfully, it is a PC stuffed into a gaming console shell. But I have to say, Asus has done a phenomenal job, but this that you're viewing right now is a prime example, I would say, of the difference, even though this is not a comparison video, between the Ally and the good old Steam Deck. Now, the Steam Deck, obviously the most popular device of this kind, but also really the first legitimate product of this kind, and it has the benefit of course, being tied into Steam, which is an eternal benefit, considering the majority of PC gamers, well, not only have a Steam account, but likely have the majority of their library there. I mean, that's the beauty, the seamlessness of Steam, and that's why Steam was able, I should say Valve, to capitalize on that. And I've been with Valve since the very beginning, like many PC gamers that are my age. But what I do really appreciate about the Ally is that we aren't stuck in a box. But part of not being stuck in a box, by that I mean inside of the Linux operating system that Valve has put together for the Steam Deck, and you can get around that, but you're better off not, in my opinion, is that we've got Windows 11 here. But part of having Windows 11, that double-edged sword, is something like Windows updates, which right now the Ally is going through. And, you know, as I was getting ready to shoot this video, I got the prompt and I figured what better way to make the point about my initial experience, or my first update on my experience with this console from Asus. Now, I think that, at least from what I've seen so far, it is superior. I will go as far as saying vastly superior to the Steam Deck. I think that, you know, ergonomically speaking, this surfboard, and I know I said I'd stay away from comparisons, I do like the ergonomics of holding the Steam Deck, the grip that they've created. However, it pretty much is like a surfboard. Definitely oversized, looks like something, I want to say possibly that could have been alongside my Lynx once upon a time. Not literally in terms of, you know, obviously the hardware and the design, but it does bring me back to those days. And maybe that's intentional, is that they know the majority of the people that are going to purchase this are older gamers, but I don't know if that's even necessarily true, but it is pretty expensive, you know, when you think about something for kids. And I don't really recommend this for kids. That's not to say that kids can't use it. Of course, there are plenty of games that are appropriate, but, you know, the nature of PC gaming and whatever, a conversation for another time. But what the Ally does really well is the hardware. I mean, even though we're watching this screen waiting for it to restart and finish updates, the display quality, which you will see once this finishes, is, I think, miles better than the display on the Steam Deck. And that's not because of the resolution. It's because of the refresh rate. It's not because of the brightness. It's because of the refresh rate. Now, you know, if you've never used a 120 hertz device, then the Steam Deck is going to look great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with its display until you start using something like this and have that 120 hertz that you are used to. And as soon as, that's if you're used to it, and as soon as you see that, it's pretty much over. Now, you know, there are people that will make the 120 hertz argument for something like their phones or a tablet, but to me, to not make that argument when you're talking about gaming is ludicrous. So that's something you're instantly going to appreciate and that you're going to be able to leverage. You know, some games I've already noticed I've got to drop down to 720p from the 1080p native resolution of the Ally, native 720p on the Steam Deck, and that's part of what makes the Steam Deck shine, is that, you know, Valve did not try to bite off more than they could chew. Part of the reason that the Steam Deck is more of a polished product for a console out of the box, because, you know, you go into your game list inside the library and you're going to see Steam is going to tell you what's going to run properly on the Steam Deck. You know, with the Ally, that's just not the world you're living in. You are, essentially, relying on yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to me, that means that just like this is a more expensive, more competent piece of hardware, it's also going to take a greater investment of your time. So installing everything, you jump on the Steam Deck, you log into your account, and you just start installing the game straight from your Steam account. Here, Asus has done a good job of, I would say, recreating that experience, good enough that it so far seems like they've done a really nice job, but inherently, because it's a Windows 11 machine, as good as the latest and greatest AMD hardware is inside of this, you still are going to run into those walls that will remind you of traditional PC gaming. That doesn't really happen on the Steam Deck, but part of that not happening on the Steam Deck is also being limited in what you can really do with the Steam Deck by not having a full Windows experience. So, for those of you out there who don't want the Windows experience, the Steam Deck is the right device for you, no question about it. If you want to have more flexibility, be able to do more than just game from your Steam library, well, that's what the Ally is for. It's the next logical step, and to me, if I was out in the market looking to purchase one of these tomorrow and didn't own either, the Ally would get my money every single time. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to get everyone's money, because as I just mentioned, a lot of you are going to prefer having that Steam experience without any Windows issues to deal with, like I'm going through here, where I thought this was going to reboot and run updates, and it hasn't done it. So I'm now rebooting the device because we've just been sitting here with a black screen, and hopefully it's okay. It was supposed to restart on its own, but it did not. And this is a good example, I'm going to say, even if some of you want to say user error and blame me, of the difference between the Windows environment and the Linux environment that the Steam Deck uses. So again, out of the box, I feel like the Steam Deck is going to be that seamless, console, if you will. And the Ally, on the other hand, it's a PC, lest we forget. It is literally a PC in console clothing. So that's not a bad thing. I think this was long overdue, but now we're getting our update. And who knows, maybe when I go to publish this, I'll edit out some of that, that time that we spent staring at a black screen, but maybe not, because I do think it is poignant in understanding the key difference. Forget about the hardware, because this is inherently more powerful. This does charge more quickly. This has a better display, in my opinion, better, not overall ergonomics, but better form factor, more reasonable. And then it also has the ability to connect external GPUs, which is just, if you want to think about future-proofing, I personally would not invest in that, but someone who loves the concept, I get wanting it. I mean, I do have an eGPU running here in the house, and, I wouldn't want to buy a custom one designed for this, but I get it. I understand the purpose, and I think it's very smart that Asus incorporated it into the Ally, because, I mean, the premise is dock it, and you have a full-blown real gaming system with a mobile 3080. So that's certainly a very nice thing to have, but when it comes to cost, I certainly can't make the argument for a regular consumer to invest in something like this, plus that mobile, 3080 inside of an enclosure. So, today's video isn't about which one is right for you, but I think it serves, having this discussion about the differences between these two portable PC consoles, which is going to be right for you in terms of already understanding what experience you're looking for out of the product. For me personally, as much as this is more work, less turnkey, if you will, I would still rather have Windows 11 and live with, the bugs that we're going to have to go through. Steam took a very different approach, which is, we don't want bugs. We don't want a product that's going to turn people off from what they plan to do with the handheld, which is game. And I'm not even getting into emulation because, of course, both of these are the piece de resistance of emulation, but I'm going to say the Ally is even better when it comes to emulation because it's simply more powerful. So when it comes to emulation, you're going to be able to do pretty much whatever you want. And that's just an ancillary feature. Maybe it's primary for you, but it shouldn't be. I mean, you're spending so much money, you do not need to spend this much in order to get to emulating. Now, when it comes to screen brightness, they're about a wash. I expected the Ally to have a little more punch, but kudos again to Valve for really putting together some incredible hardware at, again, the lowest price point in the industry. I didn't expect Asus to do that because, after all, Asus products are generally very expensive. Nothing new. I mean, my OLED monitor, shame on Asus, what they've done there. I didn't review it here on the channel. I don't tend to dive into monitors that much, even though I'm addicted to displays, have been for a very long time. In fact, in my studio right now, I have a total of 4 OLEDs. You heard right, of all different sizes, literally. A different discussion for another time. And hopefully I didn't say this video was going to be quick. Let me go ahead and jump back into this. I've got to go ahead and unlock it. And that's another thing, unlocking this with a pin, those are not things you're going to deal with on the Steam Deck. And for some of you, you don't want that prompt. You don't want to go through all of the Windows menus and screens and optimizing. You like that you can just pick this up and play what you want. And here is, your landing page, which is, of course, Windows 11. Now, I don't have a big problem with that. I don't think it's such a bad thing. And I think the ergonomics here are also quite good. OneDrive coming up, though, is an example of what I'm talking about. I do not have any interest in OneDrive jumping up. But having access to, Game Pass natively, because this is a PC, that's a big deal to me. Being able to just jump into their library and have access to all of these games that I'm not going to have native access to on Steam Deck, that's a big deal. And just scrolling even through the menu like I am now, or rather the library of games that are accessible in Game Pass this month, that is your reminder of having a 120 hertz display. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things that bothered me from day one with the Steam Deck, granted it was amazing, it still is, what Valve put together at the price point, was just having that 60 hertz refresh rate. It's rough, folks. I mean, I don't know how much it's going to come through. I'm only filming this at 60 frames, but I think it will. And yeah, it's just, it looks like crap. Now, I'm being overly critical because I think the truth of the story is that, you didn't buy this for how smooth it would be going through menus. But it does translate inside of games. You can see a very big difference. And for me, it's kind of crazy that isn't the #1 reason for most users wanting the Ally. Forget that it has more powerful hardware, because, gamers are generally obsessed with refresh rates. For years, I started gaming in 4K when it was possible, which was really around 2015. The monitors were incredibly expensive, but it was doable. Now, that was at 60 hertz. And as I watched, refresh rates push higher and higher, people continued to make the argument not to game in 4K because of the 60 hertz refresh rate. But yet, with this, 60 hertz is perfectly fine. And, I know it's a different argument, but if you are a gamer that's been, gaming on a PC with high refresh rates, I know these are handhelds. I'm not expecting the world, but the fact that you now have a high refresh option, how much is there really to figure out? Now, again, if you already own the Steam Deck, you're probably not jumping to buy this unless you absolutely love it, and, well, this is going to unlock even more potential because you're going to have the ability now to install pretty much anything you want and, find out, wasting your own time. I'm going to say wasting, but exploring what you can really do with the Ally. And with the Steam Deck, you can install games from Steam that they are going to be very frank with you, clear, honest, that are not going to run properly. And you can waste however much time you want. But at least with the Ally, when you install them, I feel like you have a little bit more of a shot, but you don't have anybody guiding you. And if you jump into the Armory, let's see if it actually functions. And this is part of, when I first booted this up and tried to use it, the crate was not working. So it was just like frozen all the time. And then I got an update that made it usable. So from here, and by the way, the 3D Mark benchmark, I was kind of surprised, a little under 3,000, not bad for Time Spy. But now being able to have essentially your game library here and quick access to Steam, and of course you can run Steam in big picture mode, which is exactly what you're getting on the Steam Deck, it's hard to make an argument for the Steam Deck outside of the fact that you're going to be saving some money. Because pretty much everything else about them, the Ally does best it. So is there really a reason to want the Steam Deck anymore? Well, I kind of at the top of this video stated at least part of my initial impressions with the Ally, remind you very quickly that you may not want that Windows 11 experience. And to me, that is the only reason at this point to still consider the Steam Deck, is just knowing that you do not want to have to deal with Windows. And again, it's a double-edged sword. There are great things about having Windows in the Ally. It's essentially, for me, it's an ultra-mobile PC, something that I've been waiting for this concept to come to fruition. And if it had to happen in the form of a little gaming console, well, to me, it's a win-win. But, there are plenty of you out there, I know it, that do not want to see Windows 11 on a little machine like this that, so far in my experience, it's not struggling to run it, but it's far from ideal. Whereas, the Linux OS that Valve employed on the Steam Deck, it's efficient, it's light, it just does what it's supposed to. So, it's a much more hands-on approach, whereas Asus, I'm not saying they didn't put time and effort into the Ally, it's just a completely opposite approach to solving the mobile PC gaming console question, or it's not a problem, right? So that's the roundup for today. Keep your eyes tuned for benchmarking, gaming demos. That's not what today's video was about. It's more about what my experience has been like. The speakers seem really good. Again, the display, about a wash on brightness, but having the high refresh rate, I'm going to beat that dead horse, as horrible as that sounds, until the cows come home. And I'll stick to the farm if I have to, because that high refresh rate is, in my opinion, still the death knell for the Steam Deck. I just don't know how people can look at the 60 hertz refresh rate and swallow that like it's acceptable when you have a real option to replace it. So I want to know what all of you think. Did you buy one yet? What do you think of performance? I know some of you are not in love with the D-pad. I have never been in love with having trackpads. Some of you think that's the most amazing feature and brilliant thing that Valve has ever done. Valve is always a little quirky when it comes to hardware. Don't get me started. I've invested in a good amount of it, which has been a mistake. I feel like the Steam Deck is one of those devices where it was not a mistake. They actually, as I stated, I think at the top of the video, they set the tone for the whole market. I mean, they made the only device you should want. But now that we have another option, things are getting spicy. And it's not coming from some unknown Chinese manufacturer. It's coming from Taiwan, from one of the best manufacturer of gaming hardware on the planet, even though I have a love-hate relationship with them. Again, I did purchase this. This is not something they sent over for review. I loved my Asus G15 back in 2021. Great laptop. I'm not the biggest fan of AMD hardware, but I give it credit where it's due, and in this, it's absolutely due. Now, as for other devices that are on the the forefront coming, if they're not coming from a major manufacturer like Asus, or in this case even Valve, even though they are not a major manufacturer of hardware, but a brilliant company at that, still private, bizarro, another story, another time. It's just one of those things where, in spite of all of that, we know what Valve is capable of. We know what Asus is capable of. Also, what they're capable of in a bad way. I'm talking about Asus now, like my 42-inch OLED. Come on, where's that firmware update? I mean, November 28th was a long time ago, and it's still broken. And I just don't have time to chase them. And that's how manufacturers get away with these things, right? If we don't hold them to task. But I have to say, so far, outside of the little bit of growing pains and updating, this thing just is pretty brilliant. So if you're on the fence right now about the Ally, you can remain on that fence until you watch some more reviews. I'll have more input. I can't tell you yet that, go out and just buy it because, as I said, it's pretty straightforward. you know, if budget is everything, the Steam Deck is still more affordable and just as capable for the most part, I think. But if, like me, you want to try titles that are not in your Steam library, and it's just easier to do it this way and to have that full breadth. I mean, I just feel like I'm going to get my money's worth out of the Ally in a way that I won't with the Steam Deck, even though I have a really large Steam library, larger than most. It still doesn't give me access to everything. And that's where, with the Ally, not only do I have access to everything, see a download just completed, but I also have a PC. And yes, you can make a lot of those things happen with Linux. It's just, do you want to learn how to do it? And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all of you. So if you're already, you know, fluent in operating inside of Windows 11 or even Windows 10, you're going to be able to do everything here. And again, I think that Asus has done a really nice job with emulating, for lack of a better word, the experience that Valve put together. Of course, ultimately, you are still confined to a Windows experience. Don't forget it. All the skinning in the world isn't going to eliminate that. But at the end of the day, that double-edged sword, I think, is more beneficial than it is harmful. But in terms of actual gameplay, all of that good stuff, that will be another video. I will be getting that up as soon as I can to show you all just demos of gameplay, because the little bit that I've done so far has been really nice. And again, I love the display. I think they've done a great job, and they deserve respect for what they've accomplished here. I mean, it's not every day we get a new gaming console that's handheld running Windows 11 that actually can outperform what was already the standard that came out all of, you know, what, a year ago in change. So kudos to Asus, even though, you know, I've got to swallow a bit of poison while saying that, on, you know, helping push the envelope that was already put out there by Valve. It's just interesting to think of what Valve will come out with next for the next generation of Steam Deck, because, you know, they did make a magical piece of hardware here. One thing I will note in the wrap-up of this long video is that the fan noise when idle on the Steam Deck is so much louder than what you're going to get out of the Ally. Now, that doesn't mean under load the Ally is going to be quiet, but again, you know, when we're just ambient noise, not doing anything, and they're just sitting there, the Steam Deck is blowing the whole way. The Ally is not. But then again, you know, it does seem like, you know, the Steam Deck does have some advantages there, which I'll get into in the next video. But again, I was trying to stay away from a comparison, but as I've been saying, it's kind of inherent when I feel like, even though these seem like they're direct competitors, the experience is dynamically different. And that is the ultimate takeaway so far for me personally that I'm sharing with all of you. Again, any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.